Welcome back to Behind the Blues. I'm your host, Davey Jones, and today I actually want to dig into something that every blues player and every guitar player feels in their bones, but we don't always stop to think about it, and that's the guitars that actually built the blues. You know, when you hear those opening licks from B.B. King or that raw sting from Muddy Waters, Stevie Ray Vaughan bending notes till they scream, and those sounds just didn't come out of nowhere. Each one of those guitars had a personality and a voice and a history. Today I just want to kind of track that story from dusty Delta acoustics that started it all to electrics that lit up Chicago clubs to the modern axes that are actually keeping that flame alive. So grab your guitar, grab your coffee, or your whiskey, whatever time of day it is, get comfortable. Now let's actually take a little trip back in time. So the blues actually began in the hands of people who had almost nothing, and somehow they took that and they made something eternal. Now, back in the early 1900s down in the Mississippi Delta, players weren't walking into fancy guitar shops. They were actually ordering instruments out of things like the Sears catalog, and most of them were like Stellas or cheap ladder-braced guitars made from birch or mahogany. The strings sat super high off the fretboard, and you tore up your fingers to play it. But they were loud, they were durable, and they were honest. And Robert Johnson played one, Son House, Skip James. Those guitars, they didn't have gloss or glamour, but man, they spoke. And you listen to the Crossroad Blues sometimes, you can almost hear that wood rattle, and it's not necessarily from poor craftsmanship. That's actually, character. That's something that resonates inside of us, and that's, iconic with that era. Then came the resonator era, where before amps, players needed volume. So along came National and Dobro metal-bodied guitars they had spun cones inside that amplified the sound, and that's how you get that haunting metallic ring that you hear on the old records from, Bucka White and Tampa Red. I mean, picture it, it's a slide on your pinky, a thumb thumping on the bass line, a whiskey glass scraping the strings. That tone, it just cuts through. It's so iconic. Resonators weren't just loud, though. They had soul. They sounded like the struggle itself, almost like raw, proud, unfiltered, and it's a truly iconic sound, one that's kept alive even today by players like Kebmo, who, if you've never listened to, take a listen. He plays resonator guitar a lot, plays slide, finger picks, and actually keeps this vibe, alive even today. And the 1940s actually changed everything. I mean, electricity found its way into guitars, and the blues found its way from the rural suburb, the rural country into the cities. When Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf moved up to Chicago, the acoustic guitar, it just couldn't keep up. I mean, you needed volume and grit and bite, and enter the electric guitar. And early models like Gibson ES-150 had big single coils and hollow bodies. I mean, they hummed, they squealed, and sometimes buzzed, but, I mean, all in all, they just sang. And then came a game changer, the Fender Telecaster. Muddy Waters picked up one, and suddenly that Delta sound became electric fire. I mean, sharp, biting, unapologetic sound. When he played Hoochie Coochie Man, that telly didn't whisper. I mean, it growled. That tone is still something that players today are chasing. It's that iconic sound that, we all remember and we're all trying to emulate, even today, so many years later. Meanwhile, like B.B. King was actually going in the opposite direction. He was going for something more smooth, clean, and elegant. And his Gibson 355, which he named Lucille, wasn't about distortion. It was more about clarity. It's speaking of B.B. King, I mean, let me tell you the story. So back in 1949, during a gig in Arkansas, B.B. King was playing and a fight breaks out. Somebody knocks over a kerosene barrel and the place actually catches fire and everybody, scrambles and runs. BB realized that he left his guitar inside, so he runs back in to grab it, and later he found out that the fight was over a woman named Lucille, so he names every guitar after her, reminding himself never to do something that crazy again. So, Lucille actually had no F-holes. It was actually sealed to avoid feedback. And that tone that came from that guitar, it was so pure, smooth, almost vocal like, where that Telly barked, Lucille spoke. And then comes Les Paul, Freddie King, Albert King, later Clapton. That thick slab of mahogany and humbuckers gave players sustain like they had never had before. And you plug it into a cranked up amp, and it just roars. And then by the 1960s, blues had actually crossed the ocean. British musicians were digging through crates for American blues records. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, B.B. King, Robert Johnson. They wore those records out, playing them and living on the vibe that they created. And they plugged in, and the British blues boom was born. Eric Clapton with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, a 1960s Les Paul standard into a Marshall combo. The tone on that Beano album, that's the birth of blues rock. It was thick, mid-range, heavy, singing with sustain. Gibson actually had discontinued the Les Paul before that record, but once it actually dropped, demand for that guitar absolutely exploded. Then comes Jimmy Page, taking that Les Paul into even a heavier territory with Led Zeppelin. You get Peter Green, and he had an out-of-phase Les Paul, which gave him that kind of ghostly crying tone on, say, Black Magic Woman. You get Jeff Beck. He made guitar sound like an actual living, breathing thing. Meanwhile, back in America, the Fender Strat was actually quietly taking over. Buddy Guy was one of its early adopters. Then came Hendrix, and later Stevie Ray Vaughan, made it his signature. That Strat was expressive. 3 single coils, 5 tones, and that tremolo arm. You could go from bell-like cleans to wild bends, in a heartbeat. Stevie Ray Vaughan's song number 1 was on a 1963 Strat with a 59 neck. It was beat to hell, strung with heavy gauge 13s, and if you've ever played on 13s, you're talking about wearing your fingers out. He actually said that it fought him, but that's what actually gave him his tone. You watch Austin City Limits, that wall of sound, that emotion, that's what blues had, evolved into. And you can't talk about guitars without talking about their partners in crime, the amps. If you think of the guitar as the voice, that amp is the microphone that allows it to speak. And early blues players used things like Fender Champs, Tweed Deluxes, little tube combos that were mainly just meant for practice. But when you cranked them up, they broke up in the perfect gritty way to fit the sound and the tone that they were searching for. That's how that overdriven blues tone was born. It's not from pedals like we do nowadays, but from tiny amps cranked up to 10. Freddie King and Buddy Guy, that snarl that you hear on the records, that's a small amp screaming for mercy. Later comes the Bassmans and the twin reverbs, and of course Marshalls. I mean, that sound of blues had gone arena-sized. Stevie Ray Vaughan used walls of Fenders and Dumble amps. Joe Bonamassa loves old tweeds. People like Derek Trucks keep it simple with, say, like a super reverb. Because at the end of the day, a good amp, it has to breathe with you. It has to live with you. So it's not always about, some specific thing that you have, not the most expensive or, the most flashy. You've got to find, to get that great blues tone, you've got to find that equipment that fits you. But the blues didn't actually stop in the 70s. It just kind of changed form. In the 80s, you get Robert Cray that brought that crisp, soulful Strat tone. The 2000s, you get people like John Mayer that carried that sound actually into pop and back again, kind of blending Texas and soul influences with clean melodic phrases. We mentioned Derek Trucks. He keeps slide alive. That SG is practically an extension of his arm. I mean, probably the best slide player out there today. I mean, arguably. Bonamassa, the ultimate vintage gear collector. I mean, he's got Les Pauls and 335s and Tellys. He plays them all like a student of the past. Then you get like Gary Clark Jr. with his Epiphone Casino, mixing modern fuzz and soul in the same breath. And online, I mean, thousands of new players are keeping this flame alive, posting licks, tone demo, lessons. Even we're sitting here talking about, these classics from the past. Some are playing, some people are playing Squires, some are playing $5,000 custom guitars, and it doesn't matter. The heart is the same. It's feel. It's not price. So, what actually makes the guitar right for the blues? I hear a lot of people, they'll talk about and they'll say, it's the wood, and some people say it's the pickup. Others swear it's the amp or the strings or even the pick, but I'm going to be honest with you. And here's the truth, and I really want you to hear this, as for any guitarists out there who are looking for the secret to guitar, it's in your hands. I mean, think about it. Give B.B. King a pawn shop guitar, he's still going to sound like B.B. King. You give Stevie Ray Vaughan a Squire, and guess what? He's going to light it up. I mean, a good blues guitarist and a blues guitar is one that lets you speak without, getting in your way. And that's why players bond with their instruments so deeply. Like, they give them names like Lucille and Number One and Blackie. It's not a superstition. It's a connection. Like, the guitar becomes a reflection of the player. I mean, every dent, every scratch, every imperfection, that's part of the story that connects you with that guitar. So if we step back and actually take a look at the big picture on this, the Stella gave birth to the blues, the National gave it volume, Telecaster gives us grit, that ES 355 gave us soul, Les Paul gave it fire, that Strat, gave it wings. And together those guitars, they tell a story of American music, a story of struggle, innovation, soul. And the blues might have started with a box of wood and wire, but it grew into a worldwide language. And every guitarist who bends a note, who chases a tone, you are part of that lineage. So the next time you go plug in, don't chase perfection. When you go sit down to practice, don't chase that perfect lick or that perfect riff. Instead, chase a feeling, because that's what the greats did. I want to thank you for hanging out with me behind the blues. If you enjoyed this trip through the guitars that kind of shaped that sound we love, hit follow, drop a review, share with another guitarist, share with someone who might like this. Again, I want to thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Davey Jones. Make sure that you keep the strings warm, your amps humming, and your soul in tune.